grand meadows, and giant sequoias. But the future of our national parks is uncertain. Many challenges face our parks today, from polluted air and water to development threats outside their borders and inadequate funding to protect our national heritage. That's why the National Parks Conservation Association recently completed a decade-long assessment of the challenges facing our national parks, along with proposed actions that will ensure our children and grandchildren will be able to enjoy the parks as we have. Our national parks have inspired Americans for nearly 100 years. As we approach the centennial of the National Park Service in 2016, please join us in helping to protect our national park legacy. Find out how at www.mpca.org.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
You're listening to WEAT Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Now get out there and do something.
Welcome to Ernie Powell's Grassroots Corner, only on Pivot Point with Maya Rocky.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Grassroots Corner. The Grassroots Corner is sponsored by the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. I'm the National Grassroots Director, and the purpose of our show is to talk not just about the issues that impact older Americans and younger Americans around Social Security and Medicare and those important programs, but because we call it the Grassroots Corner, we also talk about organizing, the art and the skill of building organization for grassroots power. And so typically our guests are people who do that work on the ground, both at a national, local, and sometimes state level. Today's show features three really good guests, three good friends of mine. We're going to lead off with Terry O'Neill, who is the president of NOW. She's with me today here in the studio. And we will talk about the fight to protect older women against cuts to Medicare and Social Security and to Medicaid and other issues that NOW is working really hard on in relation to economic and health security. We'll then talk to Julie Tippins, who is my colleague at the National Committee, who will talk about the Medicare anniversary, which is this week, 48 years since Lyndon Johnson signed in the presence of former President Truman the bill that enabled Medicare and that has done so much to protect older Americans and disabled Americans with good health care. And finally, we're going to talk to Christina Graham, who is the Director of Operations with the Cesar Chavez Foundation. And we're going to talk about the work that the Cesar Chavez Foundation does in a number of states on the West Coast, their housing programs, their service programs for older retiring farm workers, and the good work they do in behalf of Cesar's name and on behalf of the legacy of Cesar Chavez. So first of all, welcome, Terry.
Thanks, Ernie. It's great to talk to you.
It's so good to see you. A little background: Terry is a feminist attorney. She's also been a professor and in looking her up, an activist for social justice. She was elected president of NOW in 2009, and she's also president of the NOW Foundation and the NOW Political Action Committee. And, by the way, in just the last year, she was appointed and took a position on the National Committee Board. And so I'm so glad to have you here and so glad to be talking to you this afternoon about these issues.
I'm thrilled to be here. These are really, really important issues.
Good, thank you. Let's talk first about as you know, as we've talked about, the Grassroots Corner is about organizing.
Mm-hmm.
It's about building a public presence with people who are impacted by the issues at the grassroots level. Now is very good at that.
Yeah.
Why is Now so good at that?
Honestly, I think it's because of our chapter-based structure. Now really, I think of Now as the grassroots arm of the women's movement. So we don't do we don't provide direct services. We don't actually do research. We don't litigate. There are other amazing, wonderful women's organizations that do all of those things. What we do is take the information from our allies, the good research, the information from litigation that's going on, that's led by our allies, and we push it out to the grassroots through our chapter structure. So, for example, right now we have over 300 community-based organizations that we call chapters. These
Really?
And they're all, that right now they are almost all geographically based. So Denver now, and New Orleans now, and Montgomery County now. It's suburban Washington. So all communities may have a Now chapter. We also have state organizations that primarily work on state legislative issues, but at the community level, they work through networks with allied organizations on local legislation, state legislation, and federal legislation. And typically, a Now chapter will meet once a month and do most of their work online. But the meetings, the face-to-face meetings, are very important. And typically, we also have meetings with other allies in the community.
Let me interrupt for just a minute. Folks, we're getting some feedback from another room, I believe. So let's work on that if we could. As I said earlier in the introduction, Terry, this is about how effective organizing takes place. So I'd like to ask you some questions about that structure.
Sure.
So what does it take to be a chapter? How does one do that?
Well, you have to subscribe to Now's purposes.
Right.
We have six interlacing core issues. Actually, we are dedicated to reproductive rights, of course,
Right.
For all women, and really the full range of reproductive health services for all women. We are also dedicated to ending racism and ending homophobia and achieving lesbian rights, because we think that sexism, racism, homophobia, these are all connected in very deep ways, and we have to sort of attack all of them in order to achieve real equality for women. And we also support ending violence against women and achieving economic justice, which is why we work so hard on issues like Social Security and Medicare. So you subscribe to Now's issues, and then
is that one person in a given town, or
you can
20 people, 100 people?
So you can just call the national office as one person and say, I want to start a Now chapter, and we will walk you through the process. We have a convening stage where you start off with one person. Once you get to 10 people who have signed up to be members of your chapter, then you can switch your status to a full-blown status as a chapter of Now. Once you're a chapter of Now, chapters delegate voting representatives at the national annual conferences of Now. And that's really a powerful position. To be able to vote on policy, the policy is set every year at the annual conference. You vote on the national officers. We just had a national election.
Right.
That happens
In
every
Chicago.
4 years.
In
In
Chicago,
Chicago,
yeah.
yeah. So it's meaningful. And one of the reasons I think that our chapters have, individual chapters go up and down. A strong, charismatic leader leaves, and maybe there's a bit of a dry spell, and then it comes back. One reason that they always come back and that the chapters themselves remain strong is because of our dedication to those democratic principles. If you form a chapter,
ground up democratic principles,
absolutely,
from the ground up,
from the ground up, yeah, absolutely. So it's very empowering.
This is so fascinating, because what we've been reading in the last 15, 20 years is the bowling alone theories.
Right.
That community democratic institutions are dwindling, that they're not there, that people are stuck. Well, 15 years ago, they're stuck in front of their TV sets. Now they're stuck behind their computers. But so the Now is actually, are you bucking a trend? Have you found some magic? How does Now do this?
We're both bucking that trend and utilizing that trend. So we do think that face-to-face meetings are incredibly important, and we do put resources into face-to-face meetings. In fact, in the next 4 years, one of my goals is to put more resources into facilitating regional-based and state-based face-to-face meetings. But beyond that, we have now moved to creating virtual chapters.
Oh, okay.
So like-minded individuals, our very first beta effort at a virtual chapter is Young Feminists and Allies. So you can be any age and belong to the YFA chapter, the Young Feminists and Allies.
So that's not geographically based.
It's not geographically based. That's right. So this is a chapter that is dedicated to issues that particularly impact younger women.
The National Committee, if I could reflect on this for a moment, for the last year and a half has been building local organizations. So these models that you're creating are very fascinating to me. So you've got both geographically based and what you call virtual.
And we're moving into the virtual space, exactly. So, and I think it's going to be extremely powerful. I've been approached by someone who wanted to create a Spanish-speaking virtual chapter of Now, which can link activists that are particularly interested in, for example, immigration reform nationwide, and that can be a chapter. You have the Young Feminists. There might be a Women of Color and Allies virtual chapter of Now. And now, so that's a nationwide issue-based
and
group.
If I could ask this, can one be in a virtual chapter and still be in the Kansas City, Kansas chapter as well?
No, you have to choose.
Really?
You would have to choose,
Okay.
sure, because each chapter has strong voting rights to set national policy. So that you do have to choose, and so that makes a difference. If you want to be engaged, and honestly, the virtual chapters are probably not going to do much in the way of electoral politics. A large number of our chapters really come together. And the women who are active there are active because they want to elect certain people, city council members and state representatives, and to Congress. That obviously is territory based.
Sure.
It's local. It's geographically based. But if you want to engage in ideas that will move a movement, say the immigration reform movement. We know that the bill that is working its way through Congress is not nearly where it needs to be.
No,
particularly.
And it does some particular harm to older immigrants as well.
It does, and women.
And women.
It is
right.
not that great for women. So it makes sense to have an ongoing conversation about what action and what real policies do we need to move forward. Immigration reform is good. And if we can get this, that's fine. But we know we're going to have to keep working on it. So you have that. But in terms of actually electing people, that's going to be done through the geographically based chapters.
So how do you then incorporate social media into all this?
So social media is virtual organizing, and virtual organizing is what all of our geographic chapters do anymore. We have some chapters that operate almost exclusively through Facebook. It's convenient. It's intuitive. Everybody can understand it. You don't have to have a website necessarily. So it's an incredibly powerful tool. And Twitter is also a very powerful tool.
So a chapter can create its own
Facebook
page?
Yes. And we are working right now to make it easier for chapters to create their own web page through the national web page. So we're working on that. But right now, a lot of people are just diving into social media to get their organizing done. I mean, look, if you happen to be in I don't know, a region of the country, say in Nebraska, right? And maybe the people who really want to be engaged in the chapter live 20 or 30 miles from one another.
Then Facebook makes sense.
Oh, yeah. They can't meet weekly,
right,
face-to-face. Maybe they'll meet monthly face-to-face, but their actual work is being done through Facebook, through email, through Twitter, all the rest of it.
That's incredibly fascinating, and it's incredibly creative.
Yeah.
And, I want to, perhaps in 6 months from now, we could come back and see how that's grown. Because these are really good and exciting organizing models, given number one, that every organization has limited resources.
Yes.
And number two, that you want to engage people where they are.
Exactly.
You want to go to them as much as you want them to come to the organization.
Yeah.
Let's cut to some issues.
Yes.
Because there's some challenges facing women right now at the national scene that that weave into the priorities of our two organizations,
Exactly.
NOW and the National Committee. And the first one that I want to talk to you about is NOW's done some tremendous messaging and some tremendous work on the chained CPI.
Yes.
So let me just, in fact, I did some research. Let me quote from the letter that your organization wrote under your signature to the president. The benefit cuts from the chain CPR are cumulative, causing deeper and deeper harm to vulnerable seniors, veterans, and disabled beneficiaries over time. According to the National Women's Law Center, by the time a typical single woman reaches the age of 80, the impact of the chain CPI on her Social Security benefits is equivalent to 7 days of groceries per month. By the time she reaches 95, she is down 13 days of food each month. The chain CPI's cruel cuts fall disproportionately on women because they live longer than men, are more likely to be poor in retirement, and after a lifetime of unequal pay, 75% of what typically men make, as I think, are significantly more likely than men to rely on Social Security for their sole source of income. So, number one, tell us about NOW's campaign. Could you talk a little bit about the issue and then NOW's campaign to stop the chain CPI?
Yeah, exactly. I think the thing for people to remember about the chain CPI, it's just a formula for calculating the cost of living increases. And it's a stingy formula, and it's not realistic. So what we were talking about, the difference by the time a woman reaches the age of 80, the difference between what you're talking about is the difference between the actual increase in her cost of living that she has experienced and what Social Security, the amount that Social Security is adjusted to account for the increase in her actual cost of living expenses. You get this gap. Because with the chain CPI, with that formula, the Social Security benefits are not rising as rapidly as a normal woman over 65 years old as her actual cost of living increases. And so what that gap is, it's, as you said, it's 1 week's worth of groceries per month at the age of, I think it's 80 or 85. And then down the road, not too far down the road, it's like 13 days.
At age 95.
At age 95, it's 13 days of groceries per month. Now, how's she going to make that up? Well, personal savings. Oh
no.
Oops.
Oops.
No personal savings. She's been paid 77 cents to the dollar on average. If she's African American, she's been paid 69 cents to the dollar, and Latinas are getting about 59 cents to the dollar. Now, not only that's the gender wage gap, and it's compounded by the race-based wage gap that women of color experience. So not only are the wages lower for women throughout their working lifetime, but their expenses tend to be higher.
Sure.
Women are far more likely to be financially responsible for children and financially responsible even for their elders. So you have lower income, higher expenses. How are you going to have savings to make up for the week's worth of groceries you can't pay for because the chain CPI has been imposed on your Social Security benefits? It's just
the shocking
crazy.
part about, well, there's a lot of bad parts to this. The shocking part is that it's being proposed by a Democratic administration.
You know, it has, and their excuse, which I don't buy, but their excuse is that, we'll only support the chain CPI if we get increases in tax revenues
right.
in exchange. And so in fairness, it also happens to be proposed in the Republicans' budget, in the House Republican leadership's budget. But President Obama was very clear that he would support imposing the chain CPI. That is one of the reasons why our activists in the chapters all around the country, what we have said to them and what they've said to us is we're going to pull our Democratic rank and file right away from the White House. We are going to convince the Democratic rank and file that they're not going to get reelected necessarily
And that's
in
the campaign.
2014.
So going to the campaign
Absolutely.
that you've done, that's been your message?
That's our message, yeah. Do not follow the president off that cliff, because that is a cliff. The Republican Party, the Republican Party's strategy for taking over the Senate in 2014 is, number one, to wrap the chain CPI right around the neck of every Democrat who runs in 2014. And it's going to be easy because the White House has said, yeah, we'll take it. Number two, they're going to utilize the Supreme Court's Voting Rights Act decision to suppress the vote of our side.
As they're beginning to do in in North Carolina right now and Texas as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. They're chomping at the bit. They can't wait to do this all across the country. So they suppress the vote on our side, and then they hammer the Democrats with the White House's acceptance of the chain CPI. So our message to our chapter leaders is: you tell your representative to peel away from the president, and preferably to peel away in a very big, loud manner. So there is a letter that's been circulated by Representative Alan Grayson of Florida and Representative Takano
From California.
Saying we will not vote. Not only do we not support a budget that contains a chain CPI without regard to whether there's offsetting taxes, right? We will not vote for a budget package that includes the chain CPI, and my organization is going to be scoring that.
Outstanding. And you've got your chapters engaged and and doing delegation meetings with House members and senators as well.
Absolutely, yeah, we do, and letters to the editor and letters and emails to their representatives and senators.
So let's step back a bit and let's look at sort of the larger picture in terms of economic challenges and health challenges for women. Given in this economy and the struggles and the recessions that we've been through, what would you say are the biggest economic challenges for older women that they face right now?
So before the age of retirement, so women, say, who are between the ages of 55 and 65, the very biggest challenge is jobs. Just untold numbers of women have been laid off from government work. Social workers, case managers, child care workers, educators, and healthcare workers. They've been laid off, and the numbers are absolutely terrifying, particularly for women over 55. And it's true for men too, but it kicks in for women at a lower age. So older people over 50 are less likely to be laid off in the downturn. But once they do get laid off, they are far more likely to be without work for a year or more, and far more likely to take a 30% or deeper pay cut once they do get in their next job. Exactly, than younger workers. So younger workers right out of college have a hard time getting that job. Once they get it, they're fine. If they lose their job, they tend to get a new job sooner than older workers and at a much closer to their original salary than the older worker does. So for women, what this means is, I can't tell you, I've talked to so many women over 60 who tell me they are hanging on by their fingernails until they can get into Medicare, at least. Some of them have been forced into quote-unquote early retirement. So at the age of 62 or 63, you can begin receiving Social Security benefits at as much as a 1/3 benefit cut for the rest of your life.
It's a smaller check at that point.
Exactly, by 1/3 smaller. And what are you going to do? Rely on your non-existent personal savings to make up the balance? No. So jobs for older women. Jobs are absolutely essential. And the president was out at Knox College in Illinois just last week promoting his jobs agenda, which was fine. But the only time he mentioned women was talking about teachers. He needs to get a lot more serious about half the population of this country and really provide a pathway for how we're going to rebuild the social infrastructure, which is where women are employed, and not just the physical infrastructure, the roads and the bridges and the school buildings that he wants to rebuild, which is fine. You know, we support that. But he needs to support us with a social infrastructure rebuilding. And the second piece that we really need is, honestly, better benefits under Social Security for women. And our two organizations, in fact, we partnered with the Institute for Women's Policy Research. So it was the NOW Foundation and the National Committee Foundation and IWPR on a white paper called the Breaking the Social Security Glass Ceiling, where we show how 10 points of improvements in benefits that would be especially useful for women, and we know how to pay for it. It would you require all workers to pay the same Social Security tax rate, same payroll tax rate, which currently is not the case. If everybody paid the same,
you want to expand on that for just a minute? Is that
Sure.
Please.
So here's how it works. If you make $116,000 a year, your Social Security, up to $116,000, your Social Security tax rate is 6.2%. That's your payroll tax. If you make twice that, If you make $230,000 a year,
You double that. You double
your
that.
your Social Security tax rate is 3.1%. If you make $1 million a year, your payroll tax rate is 0.6%.
So it's incredibly regressive.
It's a flat rate, which is what we're calling for. Everybody pays a 6.2%. That's regressive.
And there's no cap. There's no cap on Medicare tax.
No, there's no cap on Medicare tax.
So you're
right now,
you're
so
suggesting, as well as a national committee,
There should be.
that it be changed to that formula.
Exactly, no cap on the Social Security on wages subject to the payroll tax. And if you lifted the cap on wages subject to the payroll tax, what you would find is solvency in the Social Security system for 75 years and money left over to pay for many of the improvements we're demanding. Now, it doesn't pay for all of them. So what we've suggested,
But it gets
it gets very close to
it gets
all
us
of
close. Number one, and number two, it also solves any of the insolvency issues that we may face.
Absolutely. First, it completely solves the insolvency problems, and then pays for a bunch of what we're saying needs to be these improved payments to women. But the way to make up that little bit of difference is, frankly, let's move to a full employment economy and let's have good middle class wages back again in this country. If we had that, you'd have more money going into the Social Security system, which would then provide plenty of money to pay these better benefits for women.
You know, one of the things I think we face as organizers, as organizations that organize, are the crazy arguments, and the crazy arguments that lead to pretty crazy conclusions. And there's been a consistent drumbeat since probably the 50s, if not longer, to get people to turn against their own government.
Yes.
In other words, to not just be vigilant citizens, but to really say that government doesn't work, even though you've got Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid that have pulled Americans out of poverty, have given us a level of health and economic security. Here's my question, and I thought it would be interesting to ask you this. One of the sort of addictions in the discussion in Washington, you and I both live in the Beltway, is this whole theory of austerity. Is this as crazy as I think it sounds?
Yeah, it's
and how does it particularly impact women?
I believe it's a combination of sort of crazy and stupid and ideological, right? So there are some people who simply will not grasp what's going on in this country, which is we don't have enough customers. There are not enough customers for businesses. Businesses are not hiring because they look out the window and they see not enough customers. So we're not going to staff up, say the businesses. So they're not hiring. As long as they don't hire, everybody, all the families are tightening their belts and they're not buying. And the businesses see people not buying and they go, maybe I'll have another round of layoffs, let alone not staffing up. Now that's changing a little bit, but not nearly enough to create the level of customers that we need to really have a fully functioning economy. So austerity, the austerity programs, and by the way, since private business is not hiring, who's left? Government. The federal government, unlike state government, unlike county governments and local governments, the federal government can borrow money. What the federal government should do is borrow the money and put people to work. You put people to work, those are customers. Business really starts seeing customers down the road. Reliably down the road. I got enough customers. Now I'm going to start staffing up. As soon as business really starts staffing up, that's when government steps back.
Right.
And let's go.
But the fail-safe or the safety net in between that is government.
And you do it with borrowed money. And the right-wing economists are just they clutch their pearls and say, "Oh my, you can't borrow money. That will increase the debt." Guess what? You know how much the government is paying right now for long-term Treasury bonds? Like 1%.
Right.
1%. This moment right now is the time for the government to borrow money at practically no interest rate and put people to work to jumpstart the economy. In fact, the very small amount, there's some monetary policy that's going on to try to sort of be a backdoor stimulus. Some people say it's working. Some people say it's not working. It's probably helping to get whatever increased employment that we're seeing these days, but it's not working enough. You need direct government investment in direct jobs.
Which has worked in the past, which took us out of the Great Depression, which has taken us out of other recessions in the past.
Exactly. That's what you need to do.
Let me switch to a different topic, but it's all related anyway. And that is, I've been working on senior issues for a long time myself personally. And one of the challenges I think that we're not facing in a thorough enough way is the challenge of long-term care. Right now, families who help an elder parent, an elder spouse, a disabled person in their family, they spend, ARP did this study just recently, to the tune of $240 billion in terms of the value of their labor and their services that they give amongst themselves. Long-term care is a challenge that I don't think we're facing enough, and that in fact we started to face when the Health Care Act was passed, and then over some interesting theories, they just removed it. It was called the Class Act, and they took it out.
Right.
Can you talk about the impact of long-term care on women and their economic stability, their economic future, and what some of the solutions might be?
Sorry. Sure. In fact, the imposition of long-term care responsibilities on elder family members is specifically one of the things that increases women's financial burden. Sorry, because women are the more hours that you have to spend caring for a disabled family member or an elderly family member, those are hours you can't spend working. So your opportunity cost is you don't get that money, and let's face it, you're paying out of pocket. You're paying for the wheelchair. You're paying for the car that has to accommodate the wheelchair. You're paying for all of the little things that go along with caring for a disabled family member, so it's artificial. I think it's artificially depressing the prosperity of those families. Mm-hmm. If we had included long-term care, just basic in-home health care, where the health care worker comes to the family and provides some services, where you have centers that can provide services that are well-funded by taxpayer dollars, you would see a lot more prosperity among the families that would be utilizing those services. It's honestly not that different from child care. Right. So if you have government-sponsored child care that's high quality, then mom and dad can keep their jobs and know that the kids are safe and the kids are being appropriately cared for, and the prosperity of the family only goes up.
You know what? You didn't know this, but we're actually going to go for 3 straight hours and take no breaks. Did you know that, Terry?
No, I did not know that, Ernie.
This is the Grassroots Corner. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with our good friend, Terry O'Neill, the president of NOW. We'll be right back.
Americans of all ages and political parties agree they do not support cutting Social Security and Medicare benefits to pay for Washington's fiscal failures. Putting millions of middle-class and poor Americans and their families at risk in the name of deficit reduction is not fiscal responsibility. Social Security and Medicare strengthen our economy and our families. Call the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare at 1-800-966-1935 or visit us at thenationalcommittee.org. You can make a difference.
Social Security protects us against loss of income due to retirement, disability, or death. We pay into Social Security throughout our working lives, which is why we must stop Congress or the White House from cutting our earned benefits. Join our powerful national movement to protect Social Security for current and future generations. Call the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare at 1-800-966-1935 or visit us online at thenationalcommittee.org. You can make a difference.
When I started working decades ago, I didn't know anything about Social Security or Medicare. I was too busy earning a living, buying a house, and raising a family. But life has a way of surprising us. A death in my family and disability first introduced me to Social Security. I'm counting on it when I retire, and thanks to Medicare, I know I'll have the health care I need in retirement. Social Security and Medicare are vital to millions of American families. They also contribute hundreds of billions of dollars to our economy each year. So why are some in Washington threatening benefit cuts to reduce the deficit? It makes no sense. Benefit cuts for the middle class and tax breaks for the wealthy is not fiscal responsibility. It's bad for our economy and even worse for our families. That's why I joined the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Together, we're working to ensure Washington strengthens the programs we paid into throughout our working lives. Call 1-800-966-1935 or visit online at thenationalcommittee.org. We can make a difference.
Americans of all ages and political parties agree they do not support cutting Social Security and Medicare benefits to pay for Washington's fiscal failures. Putting millions of middle class and poor Americans and their families at risk in the name of deficit reduction is not fiscal responsibility. Social Security and Medicare strengthen our economy and our families. Call the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare at 1-800-966-1935 or visit us at thenationalcommittee.org. You can make a difference.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Welcome to Ernie Powell's Grassroots Corner, only on Pivot Point with Maya Rockymore.
But anyway, welcome back to Grassroots Corner. I'm so pleased to have with me Terry O'Neill, the president of NOW. Just a few more questions, Terry. First of all, could you talk about the glass ceiling for women that keeps them from being equal participants in the economic marketplace and what the strategy is to overcome that?
So the glass ceiling is actually both a glass ceiling and a sticky floor. So the glass ceiling, women rise to a certain level this tends to be women in jobs that require a college education, and they sort of climb up the corporate ladder and they get to a certain level and they find that they just get stuck and they can't go anywhere. An increasing number of women, by the way, find themselves in that position and then they leave and go off and start their own firm, a consulting firm. In fact, this is why women account for the largest segment, of the fastest growing segment of small business formation in the country. The sticky floor is it's very important to look at that. And what I mean by that is 2/3 of minimum wage workers in the United States are women. 2/3. Minimum wage workers are women, and they are in jobs that have 3 characteristics that are important. Number 1, no health care attached to them. Number 2, no retirement security, not a 401k, not a pension attached to these kinds of jobs. And number 3, no real pathway from these jobs up any kind of ladder. So they tend to be jobs where you get stuck. And you have no place to go. That's the sticky floor. So in theory, people think, well, you're a young person, you're out of high school, maybe you go to college, maybe you get your associate's degree, maybe you don't, but you're going to get a job, you move into the workplace, and if you work hard and play by the rules, you'll find pathways to move up. Oh, actually that doesn't happen for an enormous number of women, and it's very disproportionately women that get stuck.
I'll add another phrase to that, and it's not as pervasive as what you're talking about. You said sticky. You said the
sticky floor. You can't get out of that low wage.
There's also, and I was listening to MSNBC this morning. There's another factor I'll call stick in the eye, and those god awful cards they're paying people with, where it costs you money to get your money.
Cash your paycheck. It's outrageous.
And I actually saw one where there was a McDonald's where if you don't use that card, there's a $5 fee at the end of the month.
Yeah, so you have to pay to get your paycheck either way. I mean, that's a clear opportunity in my book for federal legislation.
Yeah,
it's completely
absolutely.
outrageous, and this comes on this revelation is followed immediately by the revelation of the memo that the McDonald's CEO wrote for his employees, showing them how they could construct a
Right.
personal budget so
I know.
that they could live on the $8 and some cents per hour the guy
Abs-
paid. You know what part of the budget is? A
Tell me.
second job.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
And $20 a month for health care insurance.
Well, we've talked about long-term terror. We've talked about the threats to Social Security, the glass ceiling, and the sticky floor. I've had such a great time with you, and I'm going to pull this on you. I hope this is possible. Can you join me for the rest of the show? Because we've got some great guests coming, and I think it'd be great to have you with me to ask some questions and make comments.
I would love to. Thank
Okay,
you. Yeah,
good.
great. It'd be
Good.
great.
Okay, Terry, just let's wrap it up on let's talk about the current national priorities for now, how someone gets involved, how they can do you want them to go to your website? Just walk us through the next few months and how a person that listens to this show can get engaged in the National Organization for Women.
So we do have a multi-issue agenda at now, and that means lots of points of entry that people can get involved with. We are going to be moving forward with our campaign to break the Social Security glass ceiling. We want improvements, and we want the our federal representatives and senators to know the improvements we want. That's one. Number two, we're also continuing our national campaign for marriage equality. We're working around the states with our allies to ensure same-sex couples can get married on the same basis as heterosexual couples. And we're also very focused on, of course, the reproductive health care assaults that women are facing at the state level. We are working very hard in Virginia and New Jersey this year in the elections. We need to get better representatives into those the General Assembly in Virginia and New Jersey because those are important elections that happen this year. And then we will roll out a similar campaign of voter education and mobilization in key states in 2014. So anyone who wants to get involved in these in these initiatives can go to www.now.org and click on Get Involved. The other thing that we're working very immediately, by the way, is on the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
The 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Justice is coming up on August 24th. There is a list of buses that you can get onto. Now chapters are being encouraged around the country, and now chapters are reaching out to their memberships to encourage people to get on these buses and come to Washington and demand jobs and justice.
Outstanding. You are a great leader.
Thank
A
you.
great personal inspiration to me.
Thank you,
Since
Ernie.
I've been here in Washington, it's been such a pleasure to meet you, to learn from you. I want to thank you for the great work that you do as a leader and for the great work that your organization does. Thank you for coming on Grassroots Corner. You're going to stay here for a little bit longer.
Yep.
We'll take a quick break and come back with my colleague, Julie Tippins.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Americans of all ages and political parties agree they do not support cutting Social Security and Medicare benefits to pay for Washington's fiscal failures. Putting millions of middle-class and poor Americans and their families at risk in the name of deficit reduction is not fiscal responsibility. Social Security and Medicare strengthen our economy and our families. Call the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare at 1-800-966-1935 or visit us at thenationalcommittee.org. You can make a difference.
Welcome to Ernie Powell's Grassroots Corner, only on Pivot Point with Maya Rockymore.
our next guest is Julie Tippins, who is our Director of Strategic Outreach for the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Let me give you a little bit of background on Julie. She is one of the best strategists I've ever met in Washington. She spent a lot of years on the Hill. She's also spent a lot of years working and fighting on women's issues. And so the National Committee is very pleased to have her as one of our senior staff, and we've invited her on to talk about the Medicare anniversary. So, Julie, are you there?
I sure am.
Well, welcome. Happy Sunday.
Hey, Julie.
Terry's
Happy
with us
Sunday
as well.
to you too.
So tell us the importance of the Medicare anniversary.
Well, Ernie, we are about to celebrate the 48th anniversary of Medicare, which was signed into law by President Johnson on July 30th, 1965. So this coming Tuesday is the official anniversary, and we mark this because it's an important time to recognize how significant it is to the 50 million Americans who count on Medicare. It's 41 million seniors and 9 million people with disabilities who count on Medicare as their primary health care source. And it's also important to celebrate Medicare as a means of recognizing that it's under constant threat. This year and last year, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a budget that would eliminate traditional Medicare. So it is very much on the threshold, and by marking its anniversary, we recognize that we need to keep fighting.
Terry.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled, Julie, that you're doing this work around Medicare. It is extremely important, and we do know that coming right around the corner, right after the August recess, the federal government is going to be struggling over the debt ceiling, over the budget. We know that Republican leadership in the House has proposed yet another budget that indeed does cut Medicare once again.
It cuts Medicare. It devastates Medicare. Go ahead. You were going to comment?
Yeah, absolutely. And Terry, thank you. Thank you to the members at NOW who have focused their time and energy on Medicare and Social Security and recognizing how important these programs are to keeping women, particularly, out of poverty and making sure that women have a dignified retirement. 55% of Medicare beneficiaries are women, and we live longer. We need Medicare, and we welcome all to this challenge, and particularly happy to have NOW members working alongside us.
And one of the dangers that we face in the public argument is this terrible lie about Medicare, Julie, that it's going broke, and we know very well that the changes in the Affordable Care Act, the changes that reduced the overpayment to insurance companies and other medical and practical efficiencies that happened, helped the solvency issue and helped it by a number of years. Do you want to comment on that? Because I think that's one of the challenges we face, is solidifying public opinion around the question of Medicare solvency.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, because we all know that healthcare costs tend to go up a little bit every year, and Medicare's costs are growing at a much slower rate than the rest of healthcare, and that is due in large part to the Affordable Care Act. At the same time, the Affordable Care Act has provided seniors more services. Seniors can get preventive health screenings, cancer screenings, mammograms, cervical exams with no out-of-pocket payment. And the prescription drug donut hole is closing. It will close by 2020. We've actually supported a budget proposals that would close it even faster. But Medicare has improved for seniors and has brought costs down. If we could get the rest of the healthcare system to follow suit, we'd actually see some huge improvements in our economy.
All of this takes, as we talk about a lot on the Grassroots Corner, and as Terry and I were talking about earlier, organizing. And what I mean by organizing is helping people use their voices to communicate to elected officials to not do the wrong things that sometimes they tend to do. Can you talk about the mobilization that we're going to see in the next couple of days on behalf of Medicare's anniversary that the National Committee is doing and how a person can get engaged in that?
Absolutely. We have members of the National Committee all across the country who have scheduled visits with their members of the House, members of the Senate, meeting them sometimes at their town halls or public events, and bringing them an anniversary card and bringing them a sign that urges them to support Medicare and not cut benefits. And here in Washington, D.C., our friends in the House and the Seniors Task Force, co-chaired by Congresswomen Jan Schakowsky of Illinois and Doris Matsui of California, are helping to coordinate some activities on Capitol Hill, including speeches on the House floor, and members of Congress in both chambers are being asked to display the same signs that we're delivering out around the country on the doors of their offices. If they are supporters of Medicare, we hope to see their signs, and we have about 30 volunteers going to the Hill tomorrow to deliver those signs and bring an anniversary card and ask members of Congress to join us in redoubling the fight against benefits cuts.
So we got Terry. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, no, I think it's wonderful. In fact, we've been giving all this information to our chapter leaders, and we've got several that are going to be partnering with the National Committee folks to engage in this.
So we got people on the Hill going tomorrow with a message, with signs, with lapel stickers, with the main points about Medicare, and then folks around the country visiting both U.S. senators and House members as delegations at the district level. So how does somebody find out about that, whether they've got a local district visit?
Well, Ernie, you can go on our website. We actually have a special Medicare anniversary link on our website at ncpssm.org, and look up, send us a message on that site to let us know you're interested, and we will connect you with the volunteers who are visiting their members of Congress. Many of them are tomorrow, but some are happening throughout the week as availability was made known.
And if a person can't make it tomorrow, it still makes sense for them to get on the website and communicate back to us, and we will send it out to our field coordinators accordingly. Correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, the Social Security anniversary is right around the corner, so letting us know that that you're interested in joining us is important at any time. Also, there are letters to Congress that you can click on and send directly from our site to your House member and to both your senators about the importance of Medicare and the Medicare anniversary.
And the reason why it's important not only to do this in the context of the anniversary is that we keep hearing here in Washington about the possibilities of a grand bargain, and that grand bargain includes ideas such as raising the age for eligibility, which is nothing less than a brutal benefit cut. It includes raising premiums. It includes other kinds of cuts to Medicare services and to the quality of Medicare that we find to be both wrong and also, frankly, inefficient, because it'll keep people sicker longer.
Right.
Am I correct on that?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I don't know if people realize that over half of Medicare beneficiaries have incomes of under $23,000 a year. So when you propose increasing the premium, increasing the deductible, changing the eligibility age, increasing home health co-payments, these are all things that have come before the Congress this year. These are all very real proposals out there, and they are when you're looking at people who are making under $23,000 a year. And let me point out that for African Americans and Hispanics, 2/3 of them on Medicare are making under $23,000 a year. So seniors and people with disabilities just don't have any more flexibility to pay more. And we focus now in order to bring attention to this. And as grand bargains are in the works to look at who's paying and who has the ability to pay. And it's not a senior citizen who is making $23,000 a year or less.
Yeah, no. Julie, this is Terry. When you think that the justification for all of these cuts, is that, well, gee, the times are tough, economic times are tough. The very people that cause the economic times to be tough have seen 40% increases in their pay. These are the CEOs, particularly the CEOs on Wall Street, the geniuses that drove the economy off a cliff in 2008 and 2009. And what they're trying to do is have us pay for it by imposing these costs on seniors making $20,000-$25,000 a year. It's completely outrageous.
You're right about that, Terry. You're absolutely right that these are people who can afford to make sure that the foundation of America, and I would assert that both Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid are crucial parts of the foundation of this country, and they are important enough that people who can pay should pay, so that we continue to make sure that seniors have a dignified retirement. That is part of what Social Security guarantees. That is part of what Medicare guarantees. Before Medicare, over a third of senior citizens were living in poverty. That is not something we should go back to.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, Julie, I want to thank you for taking time out of your Sunday to tell us about these important events for the next couple of days. One more time, the website is www.ncpssm.org. Congratulations on the good work you do. And we'll be there tomorrow on the Hill and out in the hustings at congressional district offices. And so, again, we thank you for your leadership on this issue. And I'm gonna use a phrase that then segues into our next interview. And it's called Si se puede, which is it can be done. We know we can win this. We've won these before, but it's only without the good organizing and the good leadership from people like you and Terry that make this happen. So
well, thank you to you both. You're two of the people I admire the most. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, Julie, we'll see you in the morning, and good work. We'll be right back with Christina Graham with the Cesar Chavez Foundation.
When I started working decades ago, I didn't know anything about Social Security or Medicare. I was too busy earning a living, buying a house, and raising a family. But life has a way of surprising us. A death in my family and disability first introduced me to Social Security. I'm counting on it when I retire. And thanks to Medicare, I know I'll have the health care I need in retirement. Social Security and Medicare are vital to millions of American families. They also contribute hundreds of billions of dollars to our economy each year. So why are some in Washington threatening benefit cuts to reduce the deficit? It makes no sense. Benefit cuts for the middle class and tax breaks for the wealthy is not fiscal responsibility. It's bad for our economy and even worse for our families. That's why I joined the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Together, we're working to ensure Washington strengthens the programs we paid into throughout our working lives. Call 1-800-966-1935 or visit online at thenationalcommittee.org. We can make a difference.
Americans of all ages and political parties agree they do not support cutting Social Security and Medicare benefits to pay for Washington's fiscal failures. Putting millions of middle-class and poor Americans and their families at risk in the name of deficit reduction is not fiscal responsibility. Social Security and Medicare strengthen our economy and our families. Call the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare at 1-800-966-1935 or visit us at thenationalcommittee.org. You can make a difference.
Social Security protects us against loss of income due to retirement, disability, or death. We pay into Social Security throughout our working lives, which is why we must stop Congress or the White House from cutting our earned benefits. Join our powerful national movement to protect Social Security for current and future generations. Call the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare at 1-800-966-1935 or visit us online at thenationalcommittee.org. You can make a difference.
When I started working decades ago, I didn't know anything about Social Security or Medicare. I was too busy earning a living, buying a house, and raising a family. But life has a way of surprising us. A death in my family and disability first introduced me to Social Security. I'm counting on it when I retire. And thanks to Medicare, I know I'll have the health care I need in retirement. Social Security and Medicare are vital to millions of American families. They also contribute hundreds of billions of dollars to our economy each year. So why are some in Washington threatening benefit cuts to reduce the deficit? It makes no sense. Benefit cuts for the middle class and tax breaks for the wealthy is not fiscal responsibility. It's bad for our economy and even worse for our families. That's why I joined the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Together, we're working to ensure Washington strengthens the programs we paid into throughout our working lives. Call 1-800-966-1935 or visit online at thenationalcommittee.org. We can make a difference.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Welcome to Ernie Powell's Grassroots Corner, only on Pivot Point with Maya Rockymore.
Try love, 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 and we try love again, and we try love, love, love.
Welcome back. This is Ernie Powell with the Grassroots Corner. I'm pleased to say that I'm joined today with my friend and colleague Terry O'Neill, who's president of NOW, and she's co-hosting with me.
It's great
Terry,
to be here with you, Ernie.
So good to have you. Our next guest is the work she does is very close to my heart. I think you may know that I started my career in organizing with the farm workers boycott in Los Angeles.
That's right.
San Diego, and then Philadelphia, and all around the country. And saw Caesar many times. I was actually there the day they signed the grape contracts in Delano.
Wow.
And have continued to know and work with the Farm Workers Union throughout the years. And I had the pleasure a couple of weeks ago, while in Los Angeles, of having lunch with Christina Graham, who is our next guest. Christina, are you there?
Thank you, Ernie.
And Christina is the Director of Operations for the Cesar Chavez Foundation. She's from California. She's been with the foundation for over 10 years. She started her work as an advocate and as a paralegal, working on class action suits and sexual discrimination suits and other kinds of issues that impact farm workers as they work in the field. And so we're very pleased to have you here with us to talk about the great work that you're doing, Christina, with the Chavez Foundation. So welcome.
And Christina, this is Terry. It's really great to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm excited and delighted to be here.
My first question is, tell us about the guiding principles of the Chavez Foundation. How did it start? What does it do? And again, what are the guiding principles?
Sure. The foundation is guided much by the same core values that Cesar Chavez held important during the development of the United Farm Workers and what eventually grew and expanded into the farm worker movement. We believe in enriching and improving the lives of farm workers, Latino families, and all underprivileged and underserved individuals. We strive to help communities of people meet their human, cultural, and community needs by hopefully maximizing their human potential. The farm worker movement started with the United Farm Workers back in 1966, and the movement includes now the Cesar Chavez Foundation and the UFW together. I believe that Cesar knew that in order to overcome the hurdles immigrant families endured, they would need more than just a union, a labor union. They would need a movement. So a big part of their strategy was understanding that workers were not just workers. So Cesar began this movement with the implementation of co-op gas stations, death benefit services, and a credit union. The services we provided then continue to grow and expand into what is the Cesar Chavez Foundation today.
Well, Christina, the Grassroots Corner is very much about organizing. So I want to take a little bit about what you said and ask you a question. So you're saying that the fundamental organizing principle, as represented through the foundation, is not only just organizing farm workers into the union, but it's also providing services. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, yes. More services than just union work or organizing workers around better wages and working conditions.
And when did the foundation actually start?
The foundation actually started pretty much early on. It was also in the 60s. They started with, like I mentioned, the gas stations, but I think back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, I think the services that we were providing really took hold and expanded throughout the southwest region of the U.S.
And Christina, this is Terry. I think it's really wonderful to provide going beyond the actual working conditions or wages of the workers and really to the more social network that people need to sustain themselves and communities. I think collective action and solidarity has been eroded in this country, and the work that you're doing with the Cesar Chavez Foundation to rebuild that up is absolutely crucial for our ability to sort of rebuild the American middle class dream.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
So, Christina, as you know, this show is sponsored by the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Our concerns, the focus of our organization, is retirement and health security as people age. What challenges are older farm workers and their families facing as they age?
So Latinos are, as you probably know, are at a high risk for heart disease and diabetes. But when we're talking about farm worker health risks, they're much more amplified. So there's federal studies that have shown that farm workers are at a higher risk of injuries from the nature of their work, which include like reaching, bending, standing, and then even the overexposure to the sun. To amplify the health problems of this aging population, immigrants are less likely to seek medical help due to cuts made to medical services, cultural barriers, as well as even communication barriers. And
the other part of it is the not health security, but the retirement security issue. Let's talk about the nest egg. Let's talk about retirement security and the role that Social Security plays in the lives of farm workers as they get older.
So I was looking at some articles earlier, kind of looking at the Social Security and the access that Latinos and even farm workers have to it. So there was an article in AFL-CIO that stated that nearly 2/3 of retirees in this country rely on Social Security for half or more of their retirement. So if you combine this with the fact that undocumented residents cannot receive Social Security, and you have a serious struggle for many seniors, our seniors, what we do to kind of help farm worker seniors is we created housing complexes to provide affordable housing to this group of folks. We also work with preventive methods to ensure financial security for future generations. So our work in our educational programs aims to try to increase the academic success that will hopefully eventually hopefully ensure some financial security for the folks. But Social Security access for farm workers is very limited, and even some farm workers that we've been working with sometimes don't even know how to connect to that benefit that they've been working towards their whole lives.
Yeah, which really also speaks, I think, to the need for immigration reform that takes these kinds of things into consideration. The immigrant population in this country unquestionably contributes hugely in a positive way to the American economy. And the least that we can do is when they come to the end of their working lives, that they are able to retire in dignity and thrive as they've contributed to us.
That's correct. I think the UFW has been leading the fight for immigration reform for more than a decade. So we're very excited to see where it's come from since the start of this. But one of the things that we do is, you're right, all seniors, no matter their backgrounds, deserve a decent, dignified way of living throughout their entire life. So that's one of the things, the efforts that we do, is that we build these beautiful complexes that are either homes or multifamily units, or they're specifically built for seniors that have adequate living conditions, that we also even offer some social services within the apartment complexes so that they can have access to more than they sometimes have the ability to to get.
That's fabulous.
Now, the delivery of the work of the foundation, Christina, do you have functional service centers in farm worker communities?
We do. We have actually 25 different centers throughout the Southwest, and they're located in the state of California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. These centers, I think the headquarters is located in Keene, California. This is where Caesar spent much of his organizing days, and he's actually now currently buried. We have additional headquarters in Los Angeles and Phoenix, but some of the service areas that we have in these, some of them are in agricultural communities, very low-income agricultural communities, and some of them are even in urban settings, for example, in San Antonio and Phoenix. What we do, we have two different types of service centers that we provide. One of them is educational, where we provide after-school services to students ranging from kindergarten through high school, where we provide a safe and healthy environment for kids, essentially, while their parents are working, and then they get a snack and they go home and continue kind of their family relationship. But then we also have our senior services. And here what we do is we provide our program, which is called the Senior Spirit, Mind, and Body Program, where we have services of wellness programs, health screenings, transportation to local pharmacies and clinics, as well as we sometimes have social workers that come in and assess the mental health and physical well-being of our seniors.
And those are located in worker communities.
Yes, they are.
And how many housing complexes have you all built?
So the foundation builds and acquires and sometimes renovates single-family homes and apartments to lower-income families and seniors at an affordable cost. Through the foundation's committed efforts, we have over 300 single-family homes, 4,000 multifamily units, and these are spread throughout the 25 southwestern communities. So, and I believe right now we have about 9,000 residents living in these facilities.
So let's go back to the vision that Caesar brought to this effort and the intentions of the union. This fits, this is my own comment, but I'd like you to, both you and Terry, to comment on this. The service side of this very much fits with what I remembered the intent of the union was about. We're talking about empowerment through union representation, and then we're talking about quality of life through healthcare delivery, through educational delivery, through better housing. This all fits together. It is very much a part of what the early fight was about. Am I correct about that?
Yes, you are.
Comments? Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I think, in fact, now that we are working, one of the reasons that over the past few years we have begun working much more closely, not only with the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, especially with the Grassroots program that you all are building, but also with unions, because we believe that solidarity and collective action is the way forward for women's equality. We cannot get there, with every individual, considering that she is or he is just an individual on their own, not able to confront the forces that seem to be keep pushing us back. Mm-hmm. We've got to work together. We have to understand how solidarity and collective action creates community, and can make us more prosperous.
Exactly. Now, how? We, the National Committee, again, serves people over the age of 65, but it also serves anybody that qualifies for Social Security and Medicare. People that are retired sometimes have time. Are there ways to volunteer with the Cesar Chavez Foundation? And actually, if you say you're a retired nurse or a retired teacher, are there ways that people can get engaged where there's a service location?
Yes, that's a great question. I think sometimes, or a lot of times, our elders are ignored, and the experiences that they have, and just the knowledge that they can bring to helping in the work that we currently do. So what we have lots of ways that people can kind of reach out and try to work with the foundation. And as you know, Ernie, a lot of the success of the farm worker movement came from the commitment of grassroots activists. So we still rely significantly on the contribution of dedicated volunteers to achieve kind of the overall goals of the movement. So we have opportunities at what we call our Si Se Puede Learning Centers, and these are the learning centers that we have at all of our affordable housing complexes. And we have credentialed retired teachers currently working with us in providing our after-school or our summer day camp, where we focus on literacy and mathematics with our students, as well as skill building and character building of our young youth. So we have a lot of opportunities. Again, these learning centers are throughout the Southwest, in Texas, anywhere from northern Texas to southern Texas, so people can get involved that way. And through our senior programs as well, we have folks that come in and volunteer, and some of our seniors in our complexes also go give back to our youth, and then they help. We bring some youth over, and then they work together to just share their experiences and knowledges. Another way people can get involved is if you go to our website at thechavezfoundation.org or our Facebook. There's many ways of getting involved, and there's a lot of information on our website that you can access.
And when we met in Los Angeles a few weeks ago, we talked about the possibility of a partnership between the foundation and the union and the national committee around some issues facing older farm workers. So that has some very exciting possibilities as well, Christina.
Yes, I'm very excited, and I cannot wait for us to move forward and bring that partnership a lot more solid and bringing in even some, I think we've talked about hopefully getting other industries involved and bringing some more experiences and knowledges into our center. So I'm very excited and looking forward to that happening as well.
One more question, and Terry, you may have a question as well, but what states you said Texas, and what are the other states where you've got service entities?
So direct services we have throughout the Southwest, which is in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. But we also have a communication fund that does radio broadcasting, and that's throughout the Southwest, but it also includes the state of Washington and Oregon. And I believe Caesar believed that that you can educate by masses through communication, and that's when he built Radio Campesina, the radio station, to bring educational.
That's right. We didn't even talk about Radio Campesina. We didn't even mention that. And what's the bandwidth on that? What communities does that serve? That is the foundation's radio station, correct?
That's correct. So the foundation runs Radio Campesina. It's a 9-station radio network reaching about 500,000 daily listeners in the states that I mentioned earlier. It is the third largest Latino Spanish format radio network in the nation, and it attracts mostly immigrant listenership through popular regional Mexican music and like I mentioned, the state-of-the-art interactive educational programming as well.
Terry?
That's wonderful. I can you give us the website again? It's the Cesar Chavez Foundation.org. Because I will tell you the truth, I know that now members would love to be able to plug in and do some volunteer work, if possible.
Yes, definitely. You can reach us at chavezfoundation.org and on our Facebook page as well, which is Cesar Chavez. We also work a lot with the National Corporation to provide AmeriCorps volunteer positions. So we work with recent graduates throughout the country, and we've been doing this for about 5 years, where we bring recent graduates into the foundation, and they kind of give back to the community through service.
Well,
excellent,
outstanding, Christina. Thank you. I know it's. Now tell me the weather isn't perfect out there in California, as we die here of
muggy,
ugly East Coast heat. Just tell me there's no sea breeze where you are, right?
There isn't. I mean, if you would have called me if we would have talked earlier, I would have said yes. But it's a beautiful sunny day, and the weather outside is about 78 degrees, so it's perfect.
So you did tell me there's good weather. Well, listen, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. The anticipation of working on this project, it just means so much to all of us here. We commend you for the great work. It's right in line with the best spirit of the progressive movement. So we're looking forward to this partnership. We thank you for this interview. It was very instructive for me.
Yeah, it was fabulous, Christina. Really great talking with you.
And hopefully we can do it again soon. Again.
Definitely. Ernie, you and I, we started this partnership, so I'm looking forward to it. And Terry, it's been an honor to be on the show with you, and I follow your work.
It's great. Wonderful. Thank you.
Christina Graham from the Cesar Chavez Foundation. We thank you, and we hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you again from Grassroots Corner. So, this has been fun.
This has been
interesting,
awesome.
And we covered a range of things, Medicare, women's issues, and the farm worker movement, all important issues for the National Committee and for now.
Absolutely.
Terry, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for having me, Ernie. This was great.
Thank you to our audience. Once again, the victory is ours to take. Si se puede. Thank you from Grassroots Corner.
Welcome to Ernie Powell's Grassroots Corner, only on Pivot Point with Maya Rockymore.
Try love, 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 and we try love again. And we try love, love, love.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com. You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.